Alright guys, hello and welcome to today's lesson. This is Mr. Ludden and today we're going to have a look at why you get a positive answer when you multiply two negative numbers together. This idea pops itself up throughout your Junior Cert and your Leaving Cert in questions, and it's one of the parts of the exam where students sometimes tend to make silly mistakes. Oftentimes as a corrector, I have to take marks off students for messing up the signs of their answers. So that's what we're going to focus on today. If we can get a good understanding of this, it'll save you time and marks in the future. So we're going to jump straight in. In primary school, you would probably have been given something like this. So a times table is great to learn off. And you'll notice that with the exception of the zeros, every single number there is a positive number. So if we were to take notes on this, you already know that a positive number multiplied by a positive number will give you a positive number because that's all you're working with in primary school. Now, the problems sometimes arise when you're not dealing with just positive numbers anymore. You're dealing with something like a positive times a negative, or maybe a negative times a negative. And sometimes people forget whether their answers are supposed to be plus or minus. So we're going to have a look at those now. And we're going to have a look at those with a grid like the ones you did in primary school. And this is one with some of your 2 times tables. You'll notice that at the bottom I have 2 times minus 1 and 2 times minus 2. So we're going to get to those in a couple of seconds. First of all, we're going to fill out the columns here that you do know. So 2 times 4 is 8, 2 times 3 is 6, 2 times 2 is 4, 2 times 1 is 2, 2 times 0 is 0. And you would have known that from primary school. Now, just to give your answers their full name here, that 8 is a positive 8. Oftentimes you don't put the plus beside it, but for the sake of this video, I just want to highlight the signs in front of your numerical answers. So all of these are positive. I could put a plus in front of the 0, but plus 0 and negative 0 are the same thing, so I'm just going to leave those out. Now, we get down to 2 times minus 1, and this is the first time some of you would have seen a positive number being multiplied by a negative number. And you might be thinking, well, how does that change my answer? And the way I'm going to go through this, I suppose, is by looking at the previous answers that you've put in already, the ones that you knew from primary school. So plus 8, then my next answer was plus 6, plus 4, plus 2, and 0. And you'll notice that they're going down in 2 all the time because my times tables here, if you notice, I've gone 2 times 4, 2 times 3, 2 times 2, 2 times 1, 2 times 0. They're all going down in steps as well. So it makes logical sense that my next step down, my next answer, should follow the same pattern as the numbers before it. So in other words, you're sort of like taking 2 away each time. So I'll just put that here, take 2. So if I'm taking 2 away each time, my next answer is going to be, well, 0 take away 2. And if you think of your number line, you'll end up in the negative numbers there. So to the left-hand side of your 0. So if I go 2 steps to the left-hand side of my 0, I'm going to end up on negative 2. And if we take a look at the bigger picture here, 2 times negative 1 is equal to negative 2. That sum tells us that a positive number, so my positive 2, times a negative number, my negative 1, will give me a negative answer. Let's see if it holds true for the next one down as well. So I'm still going to continue on with the pattern. I'm going to take 2 away. And I'll just get rid of this line here as well. I don't need that anymore. So if I was to try and fill in the last box here in the bottom right of my screen, minus 2, take away another 2. So if I was on minus 2 on the number line, and if I took away another 2, I would end up on minus 4. So again, we see that another positive number, my 2, multiplied by a negative number, minus 2, is equal to minus 4. So we have that a positive number multiplied by a negative number will always give you a negative number. And I've showed you this here with my +2 times tables. This will work for any of your times tables. The reason I picked my +2 is because 2 times tables are probably one of the easiest ones you'll come across. So if we were to go back to my notes page, we now know that a positive times a negative will give me a negative answer. And you might notice that, like my second point here, the positive times the negative and the negative times a positive, well, I have one of both in my question. Like I have a positive times a negative and a negative times a positive. They're just in a different order. So in order to show you that these two things will give you the same answer or the same sign in front of your answer, I'm just going to do a small bit of rough work here. So if you have 2 times 4, you know that your answer is 8. If I had 4 times 2, you know that your answer is 8 as well. You'll notice that I've swapped my 2 and my 4 around in my second question here, but my answer hasn't changed. So that's what we call the commutative property of multiplication, if you wanted to get technical with it. But all that means is that if you have two numbers and if you're multiplying them together, it doesn't matter which order they're in, you're always going to get the same answers. So if we took, like, let's say -2 times 4, that would give me a -8. Just linking back into what we just found out. But also, if we'd swap those around, if I said 4 multiplied by -2, that would be equal to -8 as well, because all I've done is swapped the -2 and the 4 around. I've just changed the order of which the numbers are in, and I'm still getting my same answer. So the point I'm trying to make there is that for your positive times your negative, we found out that that was a negative. But also the same thing if your negative number came first. So if you have a negative times a positive, that's going to give you a negative as well. And that brings us on to the last one and the title of the video, a negative times a negative. So again, I'm going to go back to a times tables grid. And this time we're going to have a look at my -2 times tables. So again, this is building up upon what we've looked at in the last 8 minutes, I suppose. So we're going to start at the top and we're going to work our way down. And if you'll notice at the very bottom, we have negative numbers being multiplied by each other. So let's start up at the top. -2 times 4 will give me, well, the number is going to be 8, but if you think about the sign, it's a negative multiplied by a positive. So this answer here is going to be a negative. -2 times 3 will give me -6. -2 times 2 will give me -4. -2 times 1 will give me -2. And -2 times 0 will give me 0. Now, we're going to come at the last two questions here the exact same way as we came at the last two in our +2 times tables grid. And we're going to have a look at the pattern that's emerging from our answers. So -8, we got down to -6, to -2, to -4, to -2, to 0. And if I was to ask you, well, what's going to come next? You'll notice that from -8 to -6, the two of those are negative numbers. But if you were to think of it on the number line, if you were to jump from -8 to -6, your number is actually getting bigger. So it is. It's moving in the positive direction. It'll be moving to the right. So you're adding 2 to all of those. And the same thing happens when you jump from -6 to -4, from -4 to -2, and from -2 to 0. The same thing is going to happen when you start at 0 and when you add 2. And if I asked you, well, what's 0 plus 2? You would tell me, well, that's +2. And if we were to fill in the last box there down at the bottom, we'd have +2 and add another 2. that's going to give me plus 4. So all I was doing there was filling in the pattern of the numbers that came before. And you'll notice I mentioned the number line a lot. All we were doing was jumping up steps in that. Basically what you would have done in primary school when you were learning a little bit about numbers. So the point we're trying to make here is, I don't really care about the top of this table here, but all I'm worried about is the last 2 lines here. For minus 2 times minus 1, we've got a negative times a negative, and you'll notice we get a positive answer. The same thing happens when we have a negative 2 times negative 2. We get a positive answer. And that will hold true for any of your times tables or any multiplication question that you have where you've got a negative number multiplied by a negative number. You will always get a positive number. So if I was to go back to my notes and fill those out, the last thing we had to fill in was a negative times a negative, and I'm going to put in positive here. So just by looking at patterns in our plus 2 times tables and our negative 2 times tables, we saw that these 4 rules came out at us. And that'll work for any of your times tables, whether it be positive times tables or negative times tables. These 4 rules will hold true. And just to tidy that up a bit, I've just written them out there again, and I'm going to put those in the description below if you want to copy and paste them. It can be handy to learn those off so that you save yourself some time in an exam situation. But if you do get stuck, just think back to like your minus 2 times tables, I suppose table here, and also your plus 2 times tables. Just think of the patterns that emerge in your answers and you'll be just fine. So there and there. Alright, I think that's all I want to talk to you about positive and negative numbers when you're multiplying them. If I've forgotten anything, I'll put it in the description below, so just keep an eye on that when you finish the video. And yeah, thanks for watching.